Okay, welcome to the screencast entitled Stick With Me and Become Rich and Respected. Not with me, it's unlikely, more with Alexander the Great. So I'd like to look at the outcomes of Granicus. I know the full word of Granicus does not appear because my head's in the way, but that's what it says. All right, so Alexander's faced the Persian forces in battle at the river of Granicus and has defeated them soundly. Unbelievable start by the young king. So let's look at what happens directly afterwards. Well, the Persians ran for it, as we know, as you will know from last time. Now, there were Greek mercenaries fighting on the Persian side, and they didn't run for it. They stayed and fought. And this isn't a curious tale. What happened was that Alexander's men managed to surround these Greeks who were fighting for the Persians, and they kept resisting. And in the end, Alexander sent his men in to massacre them, absolutely destroyed them. There were some 200 to 300 of these Greek mercenaries that the Greek forces under Alexander massacred. And essentially, the battle was over, but these mercenaries were fighting on and they were massacred by Alexander's men. There were some survivors, some 60 odd survivors, and Alexander had them sent in chains back to Macedonia. They had to walk most of the way in chains around their necks and their wrists. And they made that long, sorry trudge back to Greece, not to their homelands. They went to Macedonia and they were sent to work in the silver mines in the Macedonian mountains. So this is an interesting way we need to interpret this. So first of all, Alexander is ruthless. If you are not with Alexander, you are going to be extinguished. And that's what happened to these men who ended up working in the mines. Their life expectancy, I think, was 3 to 4 months. So it's a horrible, horrible end for these men who fought against Alexander. And also, Alexander doing this, he reinforces that his invasion is a pan-Hellenic invasion. And these Greeks, he is treating as traitors who have betrayed the League of Corinth, they've betrayed Greece, and they are deservedly punished for that. And it's a very visual punishment as well. They're making that long trudge back home, or back to Greece anyway, and then sent to the mines in Macedonia. You know, hundreds and thousands of people would have seen them trudging in the long line and disappearing down the mines, never to be seen again. Well, that's what happens if you mess with Alexander. That's what happens if you are not part of the coalition of the willing of this pan-Hellenic invasion. This is what happens to you. Don't mess with Alexander. Stick with him, and things will be fine. You go against Alexander, and your life is going to be measured in a very short period of time. So, victory at Granicus. For Darius, outcome is, I need to take this Alexander serious. This is a serious issue. I had thought that he is the mere boy king who would be squashed really easily by Memnon. No, that's not the case. Right. So I, Darius, the king of kings, lord of the world, do need to meet Alexander in battle. This is a serious issue. For Greece, well, it did show Demosthenes that Alexander is not really so much a boy, and he's not a nutcase. He's defeated the Persians in Persia. This hasn't been done for many a year. For the Greeks, they're like, right, we need to be with Alexander. This is clearly who we need to be following, and any sort of resistance to Macedonia may not go particularly well. And for Alexander himself, what a brilliant coup. He's the master of propaganda. This is brilliant for his myth-making machine. He's defeated the Persians in Persia. You know, amazing battle, and a resounding success. And this is great propaganda because everything else that went before, particularly with him at the Hellespont, with the co-opting the gods and the spirits of the Trojan War and Achilles and so on, well, that's all just rhetoric, but now the rhetoric is backed up by fact that following Alexander is the way to go. So he's proven himself. He's absolutely proven himself. He is the real deal. And this would have, again, engendered confidence in the men, encouraging the men to go and fight with Alexander. But are these accounts of the battle true or false or somewhere in between? There is a few questions I think we need to ask about the Battle of Granicus. it does seem a little bit too like the Iliad, particularly the story of Alexander being saved by Clytus. This sort of one-on-one fighting right at the front of the battle. It's possible, but it does seem to be just a little bit myth-making, a little bit too good to be true. Not saying it's not, but it just there's a few questions around that. Really, I think the story of Alexander being saved by Clytus, great story if it's true. Well, it's a great story if it's not true, but it just seems like it's a little bit sort of like the Iliad, sort of toe to toe, great warriors of the age fighting one on one. I don't know how realistic that is. So it's just questions. It's just questions. Also, the sources do conflict because Diodorus does say Alexander did heed. In fact, he did wait until dawn, and in fact, he didn't attack. As I explained in Arrian's account, he went further up the river and attacked across the river at an easier crossing point. So there's conflict there within the sources. What's true, what's not, we're not 100% sure. However, I think in some sense it doesn't really matter, because completely factual sources or not, the outcomes were spot on. Alexander defeated the Persians, and it worked really well for him. And these outcomes are amazing for Alexander. He certainly got what he wanted. So let's look at the outcomes itself. Well, this is great for morale. This is awesome. For Alexander's men, yes, we've defeated the Persians. Yes, we're following the new Achilles. This is brilliant. We're going to beat them all. We're going to take all their treasure and take all their women and come home rich and respected. Fantastic. Let's go. So it's awesome for morale for the team of Alexander. And it's amazing propaganda. It's amazing propaganda for Alexander. He has defeated the Persian army in Persia. This is incredible. Philip never did this. He's outdone his father just in one battle. The propaganda that the new Achilles has come, the Avenger has come. Gosh, I mean, the myth is starting to look like reality, really. And for Athens, the Athenians are like, they're with Alexander, but they're looking for any out, I think, with Alexander as well. And they are starting to realize that, heck, Alexander is the real deal. We better stick with him. There's always going to be dissent against Alexander in Athens, but broadly the Athenians are starting to think they do need to attach themselves to Alexander's chariot, so to speak. Now, after the battle, Alexander captured 300 suits of Persian armor, and they were sent as gifts back to Athens. And with the gifts came this message that Alexander, son of Philip and the Greeks, except the Lacedaemonians, dedicates these spoils taken from the Persians who dwell in Asia. Now, this is a famous quote here because there's so much going on. So he sent this treasure, these 300 suits of armor, back to Greece. He sent it to Athens, because why is he sent to Athens? Well, he needs Athenian support. He needs their fleet to follow him. And look at the wording. Alexander, son of Philip. Okay, yes, we got that. And the Greeks. So he's son of the Greeks as well. So he is the son of Philip, and he is the Macedonian king, but he's also son of the Greeks. So that's an important inclusion there, except the Lacedaemonians, except the Spartans, because they hadn't joined Pan-Hellenic Coalition of William, because Spartan law says that Spartans can only follow Spartans. So Spartans didn't join. But as I mentioned before, at this stage, the Spartans were a spent force, and Alexander didn't have any sort of concern really around the Spartans. And so they're left out, and there's this little snide attempt to accept the Lacedaemonians. They're not part of this. They're not part of the fun. They can just sit there in the southern Peloponnese and watch the show. And there's another dig at the Spartans, because the deliberate choosing of 300 suits of armor, the 300th Thermopylae that you're familiar with, is another dig at the Spartans. Well, that's what your brave 300 did, and now you're just sitting at home. Dedicates these spoils, okay, dedicates the treasures taken from the Persians, good, who dwell in Asia, who do not own Asia. They dwell in Asia. They only live in Asia. It is temporary, and they're going to be ousted, is the underlying premise here, I think. So these were sent back to Athens, and they were well received. And the plan was to put these 300 suits of armor on the Acropolis. Here's the modern building here where the 300 suits of armor are attached. And to put there's 300 suits of armor around the top here, I believe it's called the stele, around here on all four sides, displaying those 300 suits of armor. And when I was there on the second trip in 2017, I managed to, talking to a local guide, found out exactly where they were, and they were positioned here. So here's the top of the roof, and the 300 suits of armor were positioned here, and you can see some sort of bolt hole here, and also some sort of attachment for bolts here. And this is where the 300 suits of armor would have been positioned, which is quite cool. It's quite cool to see that. So that's what the Athenians would have done with the 300 suits of armor. So look, there we go. That's it. Nice short video. Those are the outcomes of the Battle of Granicus. Awesome for morale, great propaganda, and then sending 300 suits of armor back to Greece as a publicity, a propaganda coup in of itself. Alrighty, so the next time we are going to look at the luck of the gods, or having a good PR team. Alexander moves in the coast of Asia Minor. That's a story for another day. Ka kite.